I almost ignored the call. That hesitation and everything, it wasn't dramatic, no unknown number flashing danger, no urgency in the ringtone, just vibration. Once, then silence. That's how important moments arrive, disguised as ordinary. I was trained to filter noise, to ignore distractions, to stay unreachable unless something mattered. That discipline saved me many times. This time, it almost destroyed me. I looked at the screen and calculated time, context, risk. I told myself it could wait. That was the mistake. People think mistakes come from action. They don't. Most damage comes from hesitation, from the pause where you convince yourself nothing will change if you wait. I had ignored calls before, dozens of them. Most deserved it. This one didn't. When the call ended, something shifted. Not immediately, quietly. The way pressure changes before a storm. I didn't feel panic. That came later. At first, there was irritation. Why now? Why this moment? Why interrupt stability? Stability makes you arrogant. It convinces you everything important will repeat itself. It won't. Minutes passed, then more. Silence settled, and silence this time felt different. I checked the screen again. No follow-up, no message, no explanation. That's when I understood. Important calls don't chase you. They arrive once. I returned the call, no answer. I tried again, nothing. That's the moment control left the room. I don't react impulsively. I analyze. But analysis fails when time becomes the enemy. I replayed the moment in my head, the vibration, the glance, the choice. Such a small decision, such a permanent consequence. People underestimate timing. They think intention matters more. It doesn't. Timing decides what intention never gets the chance to fix. The call wasn't about information, it was about intervention. And intervention has an expiration. By the time I understood what the call represented, it was already outdated. Events had moved. Decisions had been made. Doors had closed without noise. That's how systems work. They don't wait for your readiness. I learned something uncomfortable that day. You can do everything right and still lose everything by waiting. The call wasn't urgent because it was loud. It was urgent because it was quiet. People assume important things announce themselves. They don't. They test your attention. I had trained myself to ignore anything that didn't look critical. This looked normal. Normal ruined me. When clarity finally arrived, it arrived cold. No emotion. Just understanding. That call was the last opening. Not dramatic, not symbolic, practical. And I missed it. I didn't blame the person on the other end. They did their part. They reached out. Once. I blamed the version of myself that believed control meant delay. Delay is not control. Delay is surrender disguised as patience. The consequences didn't explode. They unfolded. Slowly, professionally, without accusation. I noticed access changing, responses shortening, options narrowing. The world didn't punish me. It adjusted. And adjustment is irreversible. People later asked why I didn't act sooner. They assume you always know when something matters. You don't. That's the danger. The most important moments rarely feel important in real time. They feel inconvenient. I replayed that moment more times than I admit. Not emotionally, structurally. What if I had answered? Not what I would have said. What would have stopped? Some consequences aren't about what happens next. They're about what never gets the chance to happen. That call carried a pause in momentum, a chance to intervene, a moment to shift direction. I almost ignored it. And that was enough. From that day on, I stopped trusting comfort. Comfort dulls instinct. I also stopped assuming that silence means safety. Silence can mean finality. The call didn't come again. It never does. That's another lie people believe, that opportunities repeat. They don't. They move on to someone else. I didn't collapse after that. I adapted. That's what I do. But adaptation doesn't erase cost, it absorbs it. Every decision after that carried a shadow of that moment. Not regret, awareness. I became sharper, not faster, more present. I no longer assume I can postpone significance. If something reaches you once, it matters. Even if you don't understand why yet, I learned that urgency doesn't always announce itself as urgency. Sometimes it whispers. Once, I don't chase calls now, but I don't ignore them either. I listen differently because some mistakes don't look like mistakes. They look like restraint. I almost ignored the call, and everything after that moment has been shaped by that pause. That's the truth no one tells you. Sometimes your life changes not because of what you did, but because of what you didn't answer. After that moment, I became aware of something I had never questioned before. I had confused control with distance. Distance feels powerful, unreachable, protected. But distance also delays response, and some moments don't survive delay. I realized how often I had trusted routine over instinct. Routine makes you efficient. Instinct keeps you alive. That call bypassed routine. That's why I didn't tell anyone what happened. There was nothing to explain. No visible mistake, no dramatic failure. Just a shift in alignment that only I could feel. That's the dangerous kind of mistake. The kind that doesn't announce itself. The kind that keeps functioning while something essential quietly disappears. I watched how things progressed afterward, how conversations moved without me, how decisions settled elsewhere, how momentum chose a different direction. Nothing hostile, nothing personal, just movement without me. People think exclusion looks aggressive. It doesn't. It looks efficient. I tried to reinsert myself, not emotionally, logically, at the right moments, with the right words. But timing doesn't forgive logic. Once a moment passes, logic becomes irrelevant. That call wasn't asking for explanation. It was asking for presence, and presence can't be retrofitted. I understood then why some doors don't close loudly. Noise invites reopening. Silence makes closure permanent. The more I thought about it, the clearer it became. That call wasn't urgent because something was wrong. It was urgent because something could still be prevented. Prevention is invisible when it works. That's why people undervalue it. I kept replaying the pause, not the call, the pause. The few seconds where I decided I had time. Those seconds outlived everything that came after. People think regret is emotional. Mine wasn't, it was instructional. I changed how I treat interruption. I no longer assume interruption is inconvenience. Sometimes it's alignment checking in. I also learned to distrust calm. Calm can be misleading. It convinces you nothing requires immediate attention. That's rarely true. The world doesn't collapse when you hesitate. It reroutes. And rerouting doesn't ask for your approval. I noticed something else. After that moment, I stopped waiting for perfect conditions. Perfect conditions never arrive. Important moments don't need comfort. They need courage. That call required courage to answer without knowing why. I didn't have it then. I do now. I became more responsive. Not reactive. There's a difference. Reactive people chase noise. Responsive people recognize signal. That call was signal, pure signal. And I treated it like noise. I no longer assume I can control timing. I respect it. Timing isn't something you manage. It manages you. There's a cost to being unreachable. People talk about the power of absence. They rarely talk about the cost of missing your moment. I don't romanticize decisiveness. I respect attentiveness. Attention catches what logic misses. Sometimes the call isn't about what's being said. It's about who is willing to pick up without knowing the outcome. I learned that hesitation isn't neutral. It chooses for you. That call taught me something permanent, not about urgency, about humility. I don't assume I'm too important to answer anymore. That assumption almost cost me everything that mattered. Now, when something reaches me once, I listen, even if I don't understand yet, even if it disrupts rhythm, even if it arrives at the wrong time, because the wrong time is often the only time that exists. I almost ignored the call, and I live with the version of my life that followed. Not bitter, not broken, aware. Some lessons don't repeat, they arrive once, like that call. And if you miss them, they don't punish you, they educate you quietly for the rest of your life.